All right, we'll take a look at the Briggs 17.5 horsepower Intek. Single slug, one lunger. This is a slightly newer one, and it's on an Encore walk behind with Encore Pro line walk behind. It's actually a nice machine. That'll be a separate video. Also, separate video will be on going over the valves, doing a valve adjustment. So ACR issue, and I mentioned the valve adjustment because it was only out a thou or two. It really didn't require much. I was able to do my adjust to tight method, so you might want to check that out whenever I release that video. I also have other videos on Briggs and a number of other MTD engine and just a whole bunch of other engines, Cowie engine. It should be in a folder on my channel for valve adjustments and stuff. And more recently, I talk about adjust to tight and valve events and what they are and valve overlap and the difference between valve overlap and ACR. So what we're going to see here is what I think is a missing ACR action. And later on in the video, towards the end, right before the outro, you're going to try to get you to listen to a noise, a very interesting noise that I hear coming from the engine. So you're going to see in this next shot where I go to pull it over and the customer complains that I can't start, it's hard to pull over. I know you can't feel it, all right, but what I do from my feeling of these motors and kind of managing them, so we're going to pull it over a little bit. So if you get to the point, I can feel it. It's in a compression stroke. It's hard to pull. Almost feels like it's going to break the rope. There it is right there. She's like locking up. It's got a lot of compression. And then if I go from here and just kind of give it a yank, all right, let's try it again. See, when customers say things, it won't turn over, or they have all these different terms that describe something, but inaccurately because they've heard somebody say it. And I said, well, when it won't turn over, what does that mean? Right? Does it mean the engine doesn't turn or spin or move? No, it won't start. Also, it does turn over, so it's not seized. So we're going to be looking for, in the upcoming segments, going to be looking for a compression release, an automatic compression release event in the valve event. So we're going to get it tight. I'll turn the motor over. This motor is very common. You're going to see this motor on a lot of your basic lawn tractors. In this case, it doesn't have a battery starter motor because it's a contractor motor. And I'll talk a little bit about in this next segment where if you just get the motor to be just at that sort of compression event, there's a sweet spot. And now you guys may have electric start, but you'll hear it when you're trying to start it. The motor will jam. The electric motor, the starter motor, will sort of jam up. And the motor might spin for a minute. That's the air compressor drain valve. And then it'll be like, how's that again, Arch? I don't understand. Can you do it? No, I'm not doing that again. So when I go to pull it,
twist it, pull it,
you pull it.
Twist it.
I get it up to that point. I let it decompress because it'll blow past the valves and the rings a little bit, releasing some compression, and then I go like that. And 2 pulls, and it started. So I showed him this. So we're going to open up the inside, take the valve cover off, which was never been off because it was really hard to get off. So no one's ever been in it. But these motors have this common problem. And they also have another problem where they blow head gaskets. And if you don't clean the engine and keep it clean, you're going to have a third problem, which is it will drop a valve. It'll drop a valve seat. Now, some people say these motors are crap. Well, maybe that's a different discussion for another day. Let's get started on this, and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. All right, that's the plug. It looks good. She was burning real good. That's that nice chocolatey look to it, sort of a brown, and a little bit of carbon around it. Now, that gasket was not seated right. People don't know to make these plugs properly tight. And these mechanics, they just don't have any experience. It's like anybody can be unfortunately, anybody can be a small engine mechanic. Like, you don't need to know a lot. Problem is, you start charging for it thinking that you can do this for a living, and you really can't even get a plug tight. Oh my God. All right, let's move forward. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to wipe this off right now, okay? And put a bead of my black RTV on there. We'll wipe it off with some brake cleaner. And just a light bead, because we need about, I don't know, a half hour, 10, 15, 20 minutes, so while I do other things. Now, I already got the model number. The model number is here. Let me see if I can get you in a little close. And you're not going to be able to see it. We need more light. So the model number is 31R976. The type is 0016. It's a G1, looks like. And the code is 1905-16ZD. So here's the ignition coil. Here's the magnet over here that fires the coil, okay? So we need to be, most of these motors, they like to be about 1/4 inch in the hole. In other words, the piston should come past top dead center, be on its way down about 1/4 inch. Now I can guess it because I've done enough of these, so I'm just going to be a little bit past the firing point. So this is where we are. Valves should be closed, not moving. The exhaust valve is here. Here's our exhaust port. And you can't see it here, but you can kind of tell, you can see it here. This comes and goes down this way. And this is the intake port. All right, so we're going to turn it over again and check it. Or I'll do it, but whatever. But we know where we are right now. So starting from where we are. So where we are is top dead center at the firing point, where this is it. The engine fired and the coil fired. Here's our coil. Here's our magnet. So I kind of zoomed this in a little bit more. I might want to bring this up a little bit. Hold on. Let me bring this up. So as the motor spins, and this motor is going to, where in the position I'm in, right, it's going in clockwise, like from up here, okay? We're up at the top. So it's going clockwise. And you can see the cupping of the fins, right? They're going to grab the air. Just like when you stick your hand outside of the window when you were a kid, probably still do it, right? Out the window in the car, right? The cupping. So we established spin, established the point where we know we're TDC, we're just a little bit past it. That's what a lot of the books say. I tend to agree, especially with the newer motors. So let's spin it. Now what should happen next is it fired. So you gotta get rid of those bad gases. So we should see, if we're correct, we should see this rocker move. Here we go. See it? So we're gonna get rid of those bad gases. So we're correct, we're good. It's gonna close. Now we wanna keep an eye on both of these. Oh, there's our intake. Okay. Let's see what's going on. All right, so we have an intake event. So let's say if we knew where the piston was, which we should, that piston would be on its way down to suck our fuel mixture in, our air and fuel, suck it in. And then as that valve starts to close, we're actually starting to bring that piston up. And that piston is coming up, and that valve, no problem. Okay, so here's our coil, and here's our magnet. So we should have fired. And there's our power stroke. Nothing's happening. Okay, and now we should be ready to push that gas out, that exhaust gas out. And we're going to start to see our intake. And they're going to be open at the same time, just a little bit. Right, that has to do with supercharging. That's called valve overlap, and that's normal. We'll actually see it. See them dance, right? That creates a supercharge because the exhaust gases are very hot, and hot molecules vibrate very quickly. They're very excitable, and we're excited. A lot of energy in it, and as those gases are moving this way, they're helping to pull, right? Intake. They're helping to pull fresh charge in, and as that fresh charge comes in while this valve is still open, you're trying to get rid of as much of those spent gases out because it pukes the charge. The more fresh air, fresh fuel you get in, the more power you make. That's supercharging, that's turbocharging, right? Because the turbocharger runs off the exhaust power, the exhaust velocity, the pressure, but it's spinning a rotor, effectively, to pull fresh air in, to pressurize the intake, right? So we're good there. We'll go over this again. So that little dance is correct. Right? But what I'm not seeing, okay, so now this guy here, it's sucked fuel in. All right, now our piston's coming up. My magnet's over here, fellas. I should see a little blow off of the exhaust valve, a little dip, a little bow. And you'll see this in a lot of my other videos on valves. I'm not seeing it, fellas. Not seeing it. So there's no ACR. I know some people have said, well, it's the intake valve that does it. No, you would never want to open up the intake valve out of turn, because what will happen is you'll have reversion. In other words, the gas is the pressure that's built up in here that you're trying to build up, would come back this way through the outside of the carburetor. That's when a valve is not closing properly. When a valve doesn't close properly, you'll have gases come back this way and out through the carburetor, and you'll see it, and fuel come out with it too. I have a motor, an old motor I did on an old Lawn Boy 4-stroke, and I was showing that. That's called valve reversion, or gas reversion, reverting backwards. And carburetors are made to suck, so that'll ruin power. You'll never make RPM. It'll ruin the power. So I don't know whoever has. I've heard some people say that. No, they might be thinking of what I just explained to you before about the turbocharging, the overlap. That's different. But I am not seeing an ACR, fellas. Look, it's trying, right? But yeah, no, that's just an exhaust event. All right, so we fired. So let's come back. All right, let's find our magnet. Let me find it. Hold on. Here's our magnet. Here's our magnet right there. So somewhere right before this magnet comes up to this coil, it's starting to build energy in the coil. And right around there, and there's a timing system, a timing computer in here. And that's what controls the spark advance, the spark lead. Okay, so we used to do that with a timing light and everything. And when that starts to go bad, a lot of times the coil won't fire right, the engine won't run right, may not get top RPM. You might be having issues. It still might run. It might run for 5 minutes until it gets hot, or 10 minutes, or 20 minutes, and then it'll shut off. All right, so we're right there. Okay, so now let's spin it around. This should be a power stroke. And then we'll go into an exhaust stroke. Okay, because as the piston's coming up, it's pushing out that bad gas, that spent gas. And now we're gonna, again, you might see a little bit of overlap. That is overlap. That is not a compression blow off. Because the piston isn't coming up yet. There is no compression yet. You got to pull that piston up this way, okay? So she's actually sucking. So people say, oh, that's it right there. No, because in order to have an intake event, you have to suck. So the piston has to be kind of going down to suck that charge in. It's displacing, so it's creating a suction. So we sucked it in. We're going to start pushing our coming up with our piston to get ready to fire. And somewhere right around here, fellas, there should be an ACR event. And it's not there. Okay? It's not there. All right, so here's our magnet. Nothing. We never got it. All right, let's close this up. Let me show you a couple other things. So like I said, I cleaned this off. I was careful with it. I didn't bend it. I mentioned to you that the model number and type and code are all over here on this guy, and I'll show you where else it is too. So I just a light coat with my finger all the way around, just a skim coat. We want it to skin because it's that skin, right, that's going to enable it to seal, and it'll actually keep it prevent it from sticking too much like it was, and it'll work fine. And there's still some, we didn't scrape the old material off because we want to, use some of that as well to seal all this up. So we didn't want to abrade or damage these surfaces really, because especially in the sealing area, which is towards the inside, not towards the outside. So as long as we're clean and there's a little bit of oil over there, we're just going to pull that oil off with our tissue or something. And it looks really clean in here. This motor's in excellent shape. It has too much compression for me to measure. It doesn't really matter. We can feel it. I can feel it when I try to pull start this engine. The motor, there was no residue or gack. I mean, remember, this was virgin. I just wiped it with a tissue. There was no gack in the bottom. So this is a candidate for an ACR. But as I mentioned to him, and we'll talk a bit more about it later, that's a big job. That's going to cost a few bucks. We got to get some current prices, but I wrote everything down. Now let me show you where else the model number is. So here's our cover with the typical plastic, right? And there's some information back here about the engine and all that. But there's also a tag here with the serialization, the model number, right, on the side. But a lot of times these tags fall off. You know, they get damaged or whatever. You can see somebody tried to glue this back on with some grossness. So even if that tag fell off on yours, I didn't look to see what the date is, but you could tell this is an older machine. It's probably about 10 years old, my guess. Nice motor. I'm not seeing any issues. Since the compression is so high, I'm not seeing any issues with leaking around the head gasket or anything. I think we're pretty good to go with this. We're going to give it back to him. I'm going to lube everything. I'll see you guys in a bit. That might be a separate video, and we'll go over the machine. But I think we're done here, and I'll get you out of here in a little bit. We'll talk a bit more, and we'll get you out of here. All right, fellas, I want you to listen. Okay, now it could be the governor, but it could be the ACR. The thing I don't like about is that when these little pieces break off, where do they go, right? Where are they going to hit? So let me see if I can get it to do it. Now, I'll shut up. I got about as quiet in here as I'm going to get it. Now, this is moving. Ignore that sound. It's cheesy. This is tight. Oh. What's that? I don't know. Ignore that. Okay. I don't know. Just if you heard it, I'm just showing you. All right, so of course this is an educational video, all right, and it takes a little while to develop all these ideas and concepts. It is a big job, by the way. When you're talking about replacing an ACR, you probably, especially on one of these motors, you're probably going to want to pull the head off and replace the gasket and clean the valves and make sure that the valves are seated well and the seats are seated well and they're not falling out because overheating, because the oil isn't changed. The most common problem on lawn tractors is customers, the people own these things for a while and they're getting older, these engines and the tractors, and they're full of dirt, and that overheating causes the oil to begin to fail. As the oil begins to fail, it gets dirtier, it gets hotter, and then a seat pops off right inside the head, and then you drop a valve, or the overheating causes the head to warp and the block to warp a little bit, and the gasket blows, right? And of course, the oil is making things worse because people don't want to change their oil. Why? I don't know. So that's kind of how this starts to happen. But you can see this machine's in really good shape. And I gave it back to the customer. It's like a winter project kind of thing, because what do you do? I mean, the machine, although they're expensive, they're only worth so much. Replacing a ACR camshaft is a lot of work, and you have to charge for that. So that's expensive. Now, what is the machine worth to you? And can you sell it? He often flips these. So I said to him, this thing will run fine. It runs fine. I went over the whole machine. Like I said, that'll be a separate video. And I did the valves. And the valves were really not out of spec. They were still kind of within spec. I just tightened them up. So it's not a valve issue. It's a catch-22. The problem is the motor. You can put a different motor on it. Sometimes it's the engine is what kind of craps out the project and the machine, because nobody really wants to replace an engine or service the engine. The costs go through the roof. And of course, out there, if anybody's watched some of the other channels, you'll see the ACR replacement is a big job. And then there's this question of, even like an original Briggs part, well, they don't last. And then you get one of these Chinese ones. Well, they really don't last. So it's, I don't know if I want to do this, right? So I said, listen, you're a big guy. Most of you guys are strong, pushing and dealing with these machines all day long. In this case, maybe you want to hold on to it. Maybe you want to sell it. Maybe one day over the winter, when I'm not so busy, we'll pull it apart. Maybe you come across another motor. Maybe. Go use it, right? Use it. It's in great shape. The machine itself is in great shape. Don't throw it out. Somebody, I don't know what happened to it. I haven't asked. Somebody will do something with it. Maybe it'll be me. I don't know. I don't know. Tell you what. You guys tell me what you think. Maybe even if some of you that have priced this out or been successful at replacing them. I know a number of people. I mean, I can do it, but I got to get paid. I'll see you guys later.